Episode 188, Setting Boundaries with Addicts with Susan Achziger.
Welcome to Latter-day Life Coaches, the podcast where each episode is a conversation between me, Heather Rackham, and one of my amazing coach colleagues. Each coach here is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and a highly trained, experienced life coach making a great impact in the lives of their clients. And together, we have one main goal, helping you live your best life no matter what. You ready for this conversation with a coach? Here we go.
Boundaries are essential for any relationship to be healthy and successful. But when you are dealing with a child that is a drug addict, they can be the difference between being able to show up in healthy ways versus creating more harm for your child. Coach Susan Achziger is on the podcast today talking about the essential elements of boundaries with addicts and how they had a profound impact on the relationship she had with her son so she could love him the best way possible. This is a tender episode, and whether you have a child who is addicted to drugs or not, you want to listen because it will give you hope and give you perspective on the difference you can make in your child's life. If you are a parent of a drug addict and need help navigating this challenge, please reach out to Susan. She knows where you are coming from and wants both you and your child to succeed. Enjoy this episode.
So I have another amazing coach with me today. She's been with me before, Coach Susan Achziger. Hello, Susan.
Hi, Heather. So good to be here.
I am so happy to have you here with me. Susan has taught me a lot in some things in areas that I haven't had a whole lot of experience with. She works with people who have addicts in their life, probably specifically children. And I should just let her introduce herself here because she'll do a much better job than me. But I love her perspective and I love her knowledge and her wisdom. So Susan, can you give us a little bit of an introduction?
Yeah, I don't have much to say except, I work with parents of addicts, mostly LDS parents or Christian parents, because I teach them to partner with God on the journey. It's a critical piece for me. It was a critical piece for me as a parent of an addict, and I think it's critical for them as well.
Yeah.
Because it's a really difficult thing to navigate all by yourself.
Well, and as she mentioned, you come to this space organically because that has been your experience in your life. And I think there's no better teacher, not that you want that as your teacher, but you have lived this life, you've lived the experience. And I think for a lot of people, it's even probably just speaking with someone who has walked in their shoes and understands.
Yeah, it mattered for me. I mean, I learned most of this stuff through trial and error, and eventually found a couple of friends who also had more years in it than I did. So, conversations with them were useful for me.
For sure. Well, one of the things we're going to talk about today is boundaries and how they are essential. We have to develop them in any relationship. They're important, but I think probably specifically in your situation, in the parents of addicts in general, we have to learn how to set a boundary that can help everybody feel safe in some way, if that's possible,
Right.
in that time period. But when you're dealing with an addict, the boundary setting process does need to be a little bit different from a regular boundary setting process. And I don't know, maybe it would be helpful for us to even discuss what a regular boundary setting process would look like. I don't know, compared to what it would be like as when you're dealing with an addict, but you've come up with 5-step approach to setting boundaries with addicts. And I would love if you could share those with us today, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I will. I think the biggest difference is when we get towards the end, because the process of setting boundaries, I think, is similar in the first few steps, right?
Okay.
At the end, it depends, because sometimes if you're setting a boundary with what you consider to be, I don't like this word, but some people do use it. So if you're considering them a toxic person, right? Then I would follow these steps.
Okay.
Right. But if it's just a regular person in your life and you have be more of a conversation, hey,
Okay.
like And it's a little easier with an addict. It cannot turn into a conversation. And I'll explain that when I get to that step.
Okay.
Okay.
Jump in. I'd love to hear your
Okay.
do you want to share those right now, or do you want to continue on for a minute before we do that?
No, I can just go right into them.
Okay.
That'll give the basis of the discussion for boundaries, I guess. But so the first thing you need to do is decide what your boundary will be and what you will do, because people get confused. I think society's beginning to learn, but people get confused about what boundaries are. They think they can control other people through setting a boundary.
Mm-hmm.
And you can never control the other human, right? No matter what you think, even parents. I mean, you can only control your children until they learn that they can open a door and walk out. And then any control that you have over them is control they choose to give you because it makes their life easier, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to follow your rules than to not. So sometimes that semblance of control we think we have as parents, that's all it is. It's just they've given us permission to have that control.
That's a great way to put it, and for us to see it that way. But yeah, when we all love to be able to control them.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when they're addicts. That's the one thing that the first instinct is to control. We've got to control, they can't use it. We've got to control if substances come in the house. We've got to control this. We've got to control who they're with. We've got to control all the things. And they'll find ways to do whatever they want to do.
Mm-hmm. So you would say the first step is to decide
what your boundary is going to be.
Okay.
And that takes some thought. You cannot do it in the heat of the moment. Like, this is not part of my steps, but it's kind of a base rule. You never want to set a boundary from a place of anger or frustration or even hurt.
Mm-hmm.
You need to get to yourself a place of love for yourself. You're setting this boundary really for yourself and for them. Eventually it will help them, but it's mainly for you, right? Because in addiction or in life, sometimes there's chaos around you and you just need to calm the chaos. And so you have to set some parameters for your life so that you can calm the chaos and have some peace in your life. And that's what boundaries are essentially for. And so a place of love for yourself and a place of love for the person you're setting the boundary with, in this case, your child.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Can you give us an example of like maybe what a boundary would be, or a boundary that you chose or something, so that people can understand that?
I will. I'll get that. Yeah.
Perfect.
So then when you decide what it's going to be, like for me, my very first boundary, my first jump into setting a boundary with my son was how he talked to me on the phone. Like, because I hated when he called me on the phone. I even had a specific ringtone for him so that I would be alerted before I picked it up. Oh, this is my son calling. Because I knew it was going to be a horrible conversation. It wouldn't be a conversation. It would be him begging for something. It would be him, usually when I say no, because I would say no, like he wanted money or he wanted a ride or he wanted something, I would usually say no, because he'd gotten himself in a situation that was difficult. I had to figure out what's a boundary that I know once I set it, I will follow through on it. One, it mattered enough to me to do it. And two, it was easy for me to follow through. And that was the phone, because he was somewhere else. He wasn't in the room with me. It was much easier to do what I said I was going to do, right? Mm-hmm. Because he wasn't there. So this is the one I first set for myself to practice, because he would swear at me, or he would start to try and manipulate me or abuse me in ways like he was intimidating or insinuating that I was like a horrible mother and all those things. He was pushing all the buttons that they push, right, to get what they want. And I just didn't want to have those conversations anymore. So that's the big thing. Decide your boundary, decide what you're going to do, and that commit to following through. That's the first step, right? And then when you go to talk to your addict about it, these are steps 2 and 3. When you go to talk to your addict about it, make sure it's no more than 2 sentences. State
That's
it.
probably really hard. You
Yeah.
probably want to say a whole lot more.
That's why you don't, because it makes you just stick to the boundary itself, and none of the explanations and none of the stuff that they'll use to try and negotiate, or they'll use to like put a wedge in the conversation and try and stop it from happening. Because the one thing they don't want is for you to not give them what they want, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you want to state in 1 or 2 sentences what it is. And so I recommend that you follow this. When you say, when you blank with a behavior that they do, I will blank.
Okay.
So when mine was with him, when I said, when you start abusing me or manipulating me on the phone, or use inappropriate language with me, because I consider that abuse. If you're abusing me on the phone, I will say to you, Matt, I'm hanging up now, and I will hang up. And my second sentence was, and if you try to blow up my phone, getting me to answer the phone again, I will block you. That was my boundary.
Yeah.
And then the next step is, when you talk to them, make sure that they're sober enough. What I mean is not high, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not sobriety.
Right.
When that they're sober enough to actually remember and understand what you're saying to them.
Yes, that seems like it would be very important.
Yeah. Yeah. So you pick that time. But with him, it was when he called. So that after I decided the boundary, the next time he called, I said it. And he blew up my phone. Even though I said, and if you try to blow up my phone, because he always did that if he didn't get what he wanted, I just blocked his phone so it wouldn't go through. And a few days later, I unblocked it, and he called, and I had to say, Matt, I'm hanging up now. And I blocked it. It took 2 times of me doing that before. When I would say, Matt, he'd go, I'm sorry, I apologize, I didn't mean to say that. And we'd continue the conversation that was better.
So he learned your boundary.
He
Yeah.
learned pretty quickly, actually,
Yeah.
because he wanted the connection with me more than he wanted his manipulative behavior or his, abusive language.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So interesting.
Yeah. And then the key is, especially if they're in the room with you, see, like my thing about this was hanging up. But if they're in the room with you, you state your boundary, and then you must walk away. You don't stay in the room. You don't let them engage in a conversation with you, because they will. They will get you, they will talk you to death until they get what they want. That's how they're wired,
Yeah.
right? So just walk away. And that is the most important step of the delivery. Just walk away. Don't let them engage in conversation. And if they try, you can just put up your hand and say, sorry, I just wanted you to know. When I just repeat it, I wanted you to know, when you do this, I will do this.
Yeah.
And another boundary I had to set with my son is, like, he would follow me around when I said, we're not having this conversation. And I said, I'm going to go to my room, or I'm going to go to another place. He would follow me around, and he would try to like pound on the door and stuff. And so I had to set a boundary and said, if you won't respect my wishes to not continue a conversation with you, and you follow me around, then I will leave the home. I would get in my car and I would go somewhere.
Yeah. But it takes the courage and the probably even discipline to actually do what you said you were going to do. Otherwise, the boundary is like nil and void.
Right. Because if you state it and you don't follow through, they know you'll never follow through. And so when you even try another boundary, they won't take it seriously.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I started with the phone, because I knew I could keep that one. And once I'd set that baseline boundary and I followed the process with the other boundaries, he knew
Yeah.
a minute.
That's
And
a really good point, that you started with something you knew you could do.
yeah.
And then that would show him that you were being truthful and you were going to keep your commitment
Mhm.
in whatever you said.
Yeah. And I had to drive away a couple times too before he stopped chasing me around.
Yeah, I'm sure that wasn't easy, but
Oh, I just took a book with me.
yeah.
Went somewhere. I made sure when I set the boundaries or when I was enforcing them that I would just remind myself, I'm not going to engage. I'm not going to get angry. I'm not going to yell. I'm not going to, get into it with him, because I love me and I love him. And that's not how I want to interact with my son. And so that helped. I just would remind myself of that. And I remained calm, and I just did what I said I was going to do, because I already knew what to do. I'd already said what I was going to do. I didn't have to decide in the moment what to do.
You
Right.
decided ahead of time. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's steps. We've talked 1, 2, and
We did
3.
them all. The fifth one is
We
walk
did.
away.
Oh, the 5th one's walk away. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would think that a parent, as they are setting those boundaries or that contemplating what it would be, that your brain goes to worst case scenario of what's going to happen if I do this, right? So how do you help parents deal with the response in themselves so they can still set a healthy boundary with their addict child?
Well, when you're a parent of an addict, it seems like the stakes are raised for what can happen, because especially as they escalate the kinds of drugs they're using, like it's not, you don't think about your kid dying with marijuana as much as you do with opiates, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's always there, because even if they're using marijuana, they could get in a car and drive, you know, like driving drunk, another substance that they can use, so that death is more of what comes to mind. And as parents of addicts, we live with that more present in our minds. But the reality is this: yes, the chances of them dying of an overdose or something else are higher than just your kid going to school, but things can still happen to your kid,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
And
that's
and
true.
if you allow that fear, there's stories out there of parents who are so fearful that they overprotect their kids from going anywhere, right?
Yes.
So like, you can't allow that to rule your life. It's always present. I always expected a call once he turned to heroin. I always expected a call.
Yeah, it probably feels like it's just always looming in the background, to just waiting for.
It is. And I would just have to remind myself, you know, birth is a death sentence. We're all going to die sometime, right?
Yes, that sounds very depressing, but the reality. Yeah.
But, we don't think when we have these little babies in our arms, and I just had a new grandbaby born a couple months ago. And so, like, we hold these little babies in our arms and they're just so precious. And we imagine this life they're going to have, right? And we never think, oh, they're going to die. But we know it,
Yeah.
right? It's not something that should cross your mind, because it's a real possibility. But you cannot run the way you connect with or interact with your child based on that fear. You can't,
Mm-hmm.
because it makes you sick.
I would assume it keeps you from being able to have any relationship with them just
Yeah.
because,
But it makes you sick
yeah,
because you can't sleep. You don't eat right. You're always like checking your phone for messages. Like I got to the point where I just turned off my ringer at night because my son was always out and about and calling me at 3 a.m, and it was making me sick. I had to go to work in the morning. I had to take care of my other kids. I had to do things. I couldn't do it.
yeah. Well, and when you can't function and you can't take care of you, then you can't take care of them in a healthy way either, in any way
You
that,
can't. You can't. You start enabling instead of supporting,
yeah.
right?
Mhm.
You're not there for them at your best, and you need to be there for them at your best. And that's why boundaries are important, because if you don't set the boundaries that allow you to have some calm so that you can be at your best, you can be your strongest, you can step up. And 100% of the time is impossible to be your best all the time, but more often than not, you're able to show up the way you want to show up
Yeah.
and the way
So,
that's more useful to them. Because when you stop enabling, when you stop giving in to their demands, when you stop like giving them a ride when they want to ride instead of saying you can take the bus if you don't have your license right now, right? Get a
mhm.
bus pass or that kind of thing. When you stop doing those things and you start responding in healthier ways, you change your response, they're going to push back a lot because they don't want the change. They want to have the control. They want you to be able to do what they want you to do and give them what they want to have. But if you hold firm and you change the way you interact with them, the way you talk with them, the way you respond to them, it opens up space for them to begin to take responsibility if they choose it,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
As long as you are doing the things that come instinctively out of fear, it will not open that up. It will push them more to use more actually. Like when you lecture them about or talk to them about, don't you see what you're doing to this family? Don't you see, if you start talking to them like that and trying to lecture them about the dangers of what they're doing or whatever it is, and sometimes you just totally lose it and yell at them, like none of that helps. They already have pain inside. That's why they're using drugs in the first place. It might have started for fun, but the way they continue it is because they have pain that they're trying to take care of pain. They just want to escape the pain for a while, right?
Yeah.
And they won't be able to heal the pain if you're dumping more pain on top of them. And you're doing it with good intentions because you want them to see the light, but they won't see the light. They'll just hear the shame.
It's a really good point. I would imagine that the fear, the constant fear, right? Like the death kind of always looming in the background and not knowing what's going to happen next probably leads parents to wanting to make a long list of boundaries. And how do you advise them on how to know what boundaries to even set?
Pick the ones that are going to make the biggest difference in your life for you,
Mm-hmm.
for you.
Because do you
For
feel like there
me,
can be just too many boundaries?
oh yeah,
Okay.
you can't manage them all, right? So pick the ones. For me, the phone was a big one. And once he became an adult, then I had a boundary that was really important to me about when and how he could come to the house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he had to call ahead of time and see if I was going to be home, if we were going to be home. And we had to set a time for him to come. And if he showed up high, I would not let him in. And he could not sleep over except on Christmas Eve. He couldn't stay at the house except on Christmas Eve. So that was a really important boundary for me and my family, because then we could have more normalcy in the home. And it stopped him from stealing all of our stuff to pawn.
Yeah. Well, and as you're giving some of those boundaries that are specific to you, obviously everybody's boundaries are
They're
going to
different.
look different.
Yeah, it has to be what matters most to them.
Yes.
What they most, where they're, if they set that boundary and hold that boundary, that will give them more relief from the stuff that is hardest for them, right? So some people can never and choose never, and that's all right, because that's why I say partner with God, because you can say things and then God will tell you no later. Like I always told, for example, I always told my kids before they even got into anything, when they were younger, I said, look, if you get in trouble with the police and you get arrested, you need to call me to tell me where you are, but don't count on me bailing you out. Because if you've made a stupid choice, then you need to suffer the consequence of your choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet, with my son, there were many times I bailed him out. There were many times I didn't. But every time he was in jail, I would pray, and God would either say, get him out. My choice was always to leave him in, right? Because that was what I had said. That was my choice. I believed logically that that was best for him to learn consequences of his choices, right? But there were at least as many times as I left him that I was told to get him out. And I still don't know why, but I know God knows why. And the only logical thing I've ever been able to come up with is perhaps while he was in jail, when I was able to leave him there, that he wasn't going to run into anybody that would like do him harm or make things worse, right? And so he could sit there. But maybe the times I was told to get him out, maybe there's people there that he shouldn't have met, right? I don't know. That's the logical explanation to have. I won't know it till I get to the other side for sure. But there was one night he got arrested the night before Thanksgiving, and he called me in the middle of the night and told me he was in jail and he wanted me to get him out. And I'm like, I'm not gonna get you out, like always. And I told him that on the phone. Probably not gonna get you out, Matt. And I prayed about it after the phone call, and then I went back to sleep. And then in the morning, that little bit of time before you're fully awake, when I hit that point, like he said to me, it's Thanksgiving, bring him home. And I was like, okay. And I think he just needed to know his family loved him, right?
Yeah.
That one, I think, and it was the hardest one to bail him out on, so it was Thanksgiving. Hard to get cash because you have to bid cash. It's hard to get cash. It's hard to get, it was hard, but you want. And I never felt like I was breaking my word about what I said, because I would explain to my son, I just said, I always ask Heavenly Father, and because he knows what's best for you and what you need. So if I bail you out, it's because he wanted you out.
That's a sweet sentiment, I'm sure, for you and for him, right? Like that's important for him to recognize that it isn't just you, that he has heavenly parents who are mindful of him as well. Yeah. So you've talked about, partnering with God in your boundary setting and just in parenting in general with your son, I'm assuming, but how do you help parents access the power of the atonement to help them be strong enough to set those boundaries with their addicts?
It's the same way that you do it all the time in your life. You access when you're feeling afraid, when you're feeling sad, grief, confused, whatever, all those things, you just turn to him. That's what it's there for. That's the atonement. That's what it's there for. And the knowledge that you don't have to be your kid's savior. You don't have to save your kid. They have a savior. So you partner with their savior and your savior, and he will help you do the things that will help your kid.
I think we often forget that it isn't like this. The atonement of our Savior Jesus Christ isn't strictly redemptive, but it is also very enabling. And that enabling piece, I think, is the piece that most of us rely on most of the time and without even probably recognizing it. But I can imagine as a parent in this situation with an addict child that I don't know how you could do it without that enabling power of the Savior.
It's the only thing that got me through it. It's the only thing. Because I didn't have a program or anything like I provide my clients, right? I didn't have that. I had my scriptures, I had prayer, I had occasionally I'd run into somebody that was dealing with it and they could like, well, I tried this or I tried that, right? But to work with a perfect being in this journey is so useful because like with the bailing out, like I never would have thought I'd bail my kid out, and I did it multiple times because God told me to.
Well,
And
not only is it
I
a
never
perfect,
looked back. I would doubt it sometimes, but there was a moment in my life where he took me to some scriptures and I read the scripture and it was like so powerful. It was basically like, you asked me every time, I told you every time, and you're blessed because you did what I said. Like that's basically the crux of the scripture. And I was like, and he was saying, so stop downing yourself. And I'm like, okay.
yeah. Not only are you partnering with a perfect being, but you're partnering with somebody who, to put it in the words of Elder Kieran, is that his name? Like
His
he's
talk was so
in,
amazing.
I know, I listened to it again this morning. He's in relentless pursuit
Relentless
of
pursuit.
Matt. You know,
Yes.
he's in relentless pursuit of any of our children.
Mhm.
And why not partner with somebody who you know is just constantly seeking to give good to our children? And I think we get confused a lot. I love Adam Miller's perspectives in Original Grace, where we think that, you know, you know, like that an addict child, like God's giving him evil, you know, like evil for evil. And I love Adam's perspective in that he's giving us good for good
Good for
and good for
good for
evil.
evil. Yep.
Yeah. And I think as parents, that brings us so much peace that we're
It
partnering
does.
with somebody who that's who we're partnering with, somebody who has that perspective, somebody who is pursuing
And someone who loves them even more than we
more than
do,
you. Yeah.
right? And I can't tell you how many times when I would say, "What do you want me to do?" And he would say, "Just love him." Like that was his message more often than not. Just love him. This was when he was experimenting with alcohol when he was still in high school. And I remember saying, I can't stand watching him stumble in drunk and like, all the things. I would wait up for him, make sure he was safe, and then he'd come in and he was a mess. I'm like, what are you doing? And he was drunk. So anything I said was worthless, right? So I just said, what do I do? And he said, just love him. And so the next time he did that, I put my arms around him, I hugged him tight, and I said, I am so glad you're home safe. Go to bed. We can talk in the morning, right? And that's how I responded with him after that. And it helped me, right? To know that that's all that God expected of me. Because when you have a parent of an addict, you think all the things like, if only I'd done that, and what if I didn't do that? And maybe I should have done more of this. And sometimes things that are said in church make you feel judged because as a parent, because their kids are not going down this path or whatever. And so you must have done something wrong. But you look at Job, his friends and family judged him, and he did nothing wrong, right? They kept thinking, you must have brought this on yourself. But no,
Yeah.
it's just free agency and choices and love. And rehabs are hard. They don't have a high success rate. And I think that's because some do, but these 28-day rehabs, it's not enough time for one thing. They don't have a success rate because they don't create the right kind of connection. When kids use drugs, they connect with other druggies, right? They connect with other kids that are using drugs. And they go to rehab and there's kids using drugs and they all have the same experience, but then they go back out in the world and regular people, if you want to put them that way, don't want to be around them because they're trouble and they want connection. So if you don't have that connection of love with them where they feel safe with you, and boundaries do help people feel safe, right? Like my boundaries let him know I still want to see you. I still would love to have you at the house if you're sober. I still want to talk to you if you can speak respectfully. You're my son and I love you. You're still giving connection, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that connection is what they crave. The outcome you want for your child is to stop using so they can have a happier, more productive life. And that's a fabulous outcome. But you don't get to choose the outcome. So you need to detach from the outcome, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you can detach from the outcome and just love them and try and connect with them in healthy ways, you're going to have more peace. They're going to have more space to know that they are loved and to maybe like realize at some point the choice is theirs, right? And I saw that with my son. Like, my son died. I told that on the first podcast, but after 2 years of sobriety. So it worked to get him to that place, right? And what happened with him is he had some really three kind of pretty severe like things happen to him within a week and a half. And he went back to his old pattern of coping one time and it killed him. But he was being successful as an artist, making money with his art, being a good dad to his little girl. He was doing good things. And when we found my sister-in-law cleaned his car, she said I was humbled and shocked because she had always judged him as not being fully sober, which he had been, right? And she said I expected to find drug paraphernalia in his car and everything. And she said, I found a Book of Mormon that was marked up and dog-eared. I found 2 professional development books that he'd been reading and a Bible. And they know, even when they're using, they know what we've taught. And he was coming back. He was going to church. He was doing Bible study with his neighbor. And he was trying, he had a goal to get temple worthy and take his girlfriend to the temples. And now he's continuing that path in heaven. He's on that path. He's learning. He's surrounded by people that love him. And he's in a good place. I miss him, but he's in a good place.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. I would imagine that detaching from the outcome is probably a very difficult thing to do. I would assume that, and you didn't have this, but having somebody to work with, like a coach, would be very helpful in detaching from that, being able to walk through that and to be able to do the work that it would take to do that. Well, so I'm so glad that people have that resource through you.
And I love working with these people because my heart is with them.
Oh,
my heart is so there with them.
I can only imagine. Well, Susan, thank you so much for being with me today, for sharing your story, which I'm sure is not always easy to share and tender and brings, it's close to your heart, but I appreciate it. And those who are listening who need to hear this, I know they appreciate it too. So thank you. But before we leave, can you tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, my last name's hard to spell, so I just use my last initial.
Okay.
So it's susanacoaching.com. If you go there, it's just a real simple website, but there's a place where you can set like an appointment with me, for a free consult if you're interested. If you just want to follow me, Susan Achziger Achziger, Susan Achziger on Facebook, and Susan A. Coaching on Instagram.
Okay. Well, like always, we will link to those things in our show notes to make it easier for people to follow. Thank you for being with me today. And thank you to our listeners for being here. I would bet that most people know someone in their life who needs to hear this message. We all know somebody who has a loved one who is challenging, who is dealing with addictions. And I would just encourage you to share this with people that you love because they will love you for sharing it. Thanks, Susan.
Thanks for having me, Heather. It's always good to talk to you.
Thanks for being here. Hey, we just wanted to thank you for spending part of your day here with us at Latter-day Life Coaches and being part of this conversation. Share this with your friends so that you can have a conversation with them on this topic as well. And as always, subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Have a good one, my friends.